Hello, everyone. Welcome to the cert-manager bi-weekly development meeting. It's the 8th of February 2023. It's just gone 5 o'clock London time. I'm currently in Tampa, so it's just gone midday for me. We've got a few items on the agenda today, and I guess we can just leap right into them. Conveniently, I happen to be the one that put the first thing on the agenda, so I'll just jump into my thing. I've spotted that a few of the repos in our organization have owners files which do not reflect the current active maintainers of any of our projects. This is a massive pet peeve of mine anyway. Like, I would never create these files this way in the first place. I can see why it happens, but I think in any case, it's not sustainable for us to have an owner's file, which only allows people who don't actively work on cert-manager at all to approve pull requests. It means that we have to go around and backdoor things by adding approvals manually to stuff. I suppose one thing that doesn't need discussion, I would anticipate doesn't need discussion, is that we just, anywhere there's an owner's file that's like the one that I linked in the notes, we update it to include people like us in this call who actually actively do maintenance work on cert-manager day to day. The next follow-on part to that is like, does any of this matter? Do we ever need to have a separate list? Like, I don't see why with a project of our size. Maybe it's worth having that conversation, or maybe it's worth me just saying in this call, I'm going to go through and check them all and update them so that we're all in the file. And then for now, that'll do. Like, maybe that's the easiest thing to do for now. Like, does anyone have any thoughts?
Like, I mean, there's two things. One thing is that there are a couple of people who are as approvers to like separate parts of code who are not maintainers. Like, there's one person who is an approver for Vault who has like made significant contributions, but they're not a maintainer. And somebody also similarly for Route 53. But like another thing is that owners, we're actually not using, I think, the owners files properly. So I think like the idea of the owners files is you can split like approvers and reviewers. And today there actually was a message in upstream Kubernetes from Ben Elder where he kind of encouraged people to use the reviewers section more to involve non-maintainers into like kind of PR reviewing process so that you could add people who are interested in contributing to the project as reviewers in owners files. So they don't have approval rights, but they can do things like, like a first review through like a and I feel like for us, perhaps that would be quite a nice thing to do because we do have a lot of open PRs and there are people who are interested in perhaps this way of contribution would be nice.
A really interesting link, thank you. I'll put that in the document. Tim?
So I'm wondering now, if you put no one in the approver list of the owners file, does that then mean that it's only the people who are in the cert-manager organization that are the approvers? Or is it like a way to automatically sync with all the members of the cert-manager organization, basically?
I think you can add teams, can't you? You can refer to whole teams in GitHub. I have seen that in the Cube Builder project or something like that.
I think we need that, right? So we need to specify, okay, everyone in the team is an approver, and then maybe some additional people specific to a certain project. And then we don't have to update in case someone joins or is removed from the team.
Yeah, you can see how it would be something that could be tested as well, like a daily prow job that pulls the owner's file for each repo we care about and checks that it's got the right people in it, the right team in it. The team might be worth looking into.
We do at the moment actually have owners files with labels. I am now not entirely sure where those labels are specified, but I think that would be a way how to define the whole team in one place and just assign all members or all labels by default to each team member.
Makes sense.
Okay, cool. Ashley, did you say this already, or like who is responsible for this? Who will take on this action point?
I'm happy to go and do it. Like I say, it's a real pet peeve of mine to see this stuff. Another thing is like put people's personal emails in like Helm chart contacts and things like that. It grinds my gears in a fairly significant way. So I'm happy to go through and blitz through it all. And I will add myself as an action item as well.
I'll happily review everything that you create. But I would directly already work with these labels or these themes so that we have all that out of the way already. So directly go for the best practice.
Yeah, thanks very much. I don't know when I'll do it because I'm traveling and things, but I'll take it as an action item. Cool. I think that's the natural end of that discussion. So we can move on. First, I'll say welcome to Lukasz, who's joined us during that.
Thank you. Hello.
We'll get onto your discussion point in just a sec, if that's okay. Irbe had something in the agenda beforehand, so we'll move onto that, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Thank you. So yeah, Irbe, take it away.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get back to the same discussion about feature policy. We talked about this quite in detail, like a couple of meetings ago, and we didn't really come to any conclusion. So like the discussion topic is we currently have a lot of alpha features in cert-manager. People are asking when we will graduate them, and we actually don't have any agreement or policy like according to what criteria we graduate dancing and whether like beat features are on and stuff like that. Yeah, so I just like I'll just there's a linked PR I think in that document. Like I think that we probably just want to define like some super loose criteria for this so that we can just start maybe graduating them one by one as it's needed. I'm going to open that PR maybe and like present it just so that it's kind of clear what I'm talking about. It's not going to be this. Can you see my screen?
Can.
Cool. Can you see the PR?
You can see a PR, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I mean, so I just read through like the Kubernetes one. Like at the moment, the mechanism that we have again is that all features are off by default, beat features are off by default. That's like we don't have any beat features, but and yeah, like I just picked some stuff from like upstream Kubernetes that more or less seems quite harmless. Like we keep alpha off, we keep beta off. Like the difference between alpha and beta is that alpha can be removed without warning. Beta will not be removed, but can be changed. That I didn't really give it any thinking. I just more or less copied it from here. I mean, it seems kind of sensible, and that like if for beat features, if it gets changed, we will provide like migration instructions. Whereas for alpha, we kind of reserve rights to just remove it. And yeah, then GA is always off and it can't be toggled on or off. And there's no more flag for it. So that's like basic difference. And yeah, there isn't really, I don't think that Kubernetes has any kind of like graduation criteria themselves. So it's more like, I've seen them like kind of having issues where they gather user feedback, but I don't think it's like any defined process for it, really. And then it's just like a listing of the existing ones. Yeah. Yeah, so there's this PR which kind of like really, this commit that kind of like loosely defines the difference and just what we kind of commit to, that we, you know, that will like, we won't entirely remove something when it's like beta. Yeah, and like the first commit just describes how we already like do the feature gating stuff with like webhook and all of that, which is how it's currently implemented. Yeah, I'm just curious, like, what do people think?
My initial reaction is positive. It makes sense. It moves things forward, and you clearly care about moving things forward in this space. So I can't see any reason not to do it or to block it. So I'm supportive.
Cool. I mean, I'm just going to post the PR again for review. I kind of wanted, again, for it to just be more visible because to like kind of affect people. But okay, if that's good, I'll just like post it in Slack again for review. If there isn't any like other reasons for people to think that it's not, or that there are potential issues.
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
Fantastic. If that's everything on that, then I guess that PR will be reviewed in time in the normal way. So the next thing is, Lukasz, would you like to talk about the issue you've raised?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in need of OCSP stapling. That's TLS extension for OCSP, Online Certificate Status Protocol. I'll explain just in TLDR what it is, because not everyone might be familiar with it. So OCSP is a protocol that replaces certificate revocation lists. It just makes certificate verification more robust, because we are not fetching the entire list of all revoked certificates from the certificate authority, but instead we are requesting status of one of a particular certificate, and we receive a response which is stating that certificate with fingerprint issued by someone is valid or not. Also, there are some other states, but basically that's the whole logic. So we just send query to OCSP server, which is controlled by the certificate authority, and we get the status back. And what staple is just their encoded response from OCSP server. And why is it important? Because it allows to shorten the TLS handshake. So for instance, if client comes to the server, they want to connect, TLS handshake happens, server presents its certificate. With OCSP stapling on, along the certificate, it will also present the staple. So the prefetched response from the certificate authority. And now client possesses both certificate and the status response from the organization that issued the certificate. Both things are signed by the same authority, so client has all the information he needs to verify the certificate authority without making any additional or extra requests to the certificate authority. Why is it important? Two things. It shortens the handshake. Sometimes it is required in business proposals. It is a requirement, and the other thing is that it offloads the certificate authority infrastructure. And why I'm asking this feature on cert-manager. So I already asked for this feature on Istio, and I pushed my PR for it. So Istio will be taking the OCSP response from the Kubernetes secret and will be forwarding it to Envoy proxy. Envoy proxy already has OCSP stapling support, so it will just present the staple alongside the certificate. And what I'm missing is the bit how I put the OCSP staple inside the Kubernetes secret. And hence we are using Acme, and most of the certificates that we are using are Let's Encrypt. And cert-manager does really well in this area, and it renews the certificates. So I figured maybe we could extend the controller to prefetch the OCSP responses as well. The only caveat is that OCSP staples, the responses are short-lived. Those have like TTL of days, like 7 or 5 days. So it might add a little bit of the load on cert-manager, but my proposal is to store the prefetched OCSP response. I saw that cert-manager already has code for querying the OCSP server for certificate status. So we could just reuse the same code and modify the controller to check it periodically. So inside the response, there's a due date, and we can also configure the margin. So we can fetch the OCSP status again 1 day before the current one expires or something like that. So basically, that's my request. I'll be happy to contribute code for it if you guys accept the change and give me some pointers on how to implement it, on which components you would like to see the change happening. So it's so it is in synergy with code base that you already got.
Thank you. That's a really great summary. Conveniently, I am fairly familiar with OCSP, so I can talk about this. My initial reaction is it makes a lot of sense for cert-manager to do this, and it makes sense to add it in cert-manager. This would probably go into the controller, the cert-manager controller component. Naturally, it seems like a natural fit. The question marks are one that you already raised, which is that the OCSP staple response has a different lifetime to the certificate itself. We probably don't want to reissue the entire certificate to get a new OCSP staple. So then that introduces like another synchronization thing that we need to do, right? Yeah, a new loop. The second thing is that not all issuers are going to be able to support this. And in fact, I would be surprised if, to start with, this would be anything other than Acme, because I can't imagine anyone implementing this for any of the other built-in ones. So there's question marks there about how we do it sustainably across the different issuer types when, like, it doesn't need to be a blocker because, like, there's no reason that anything else couldn't support this. I just think in practice, nothing except Acme will be updated to support it. So we would need to think about like how that works going forwards and how that changes, how we test things, and the usual stuff. But those are the things that jump to mind for me. One final point before I pass over to Tim is that I think my instinct is that this is a feature we would accept, especially if you could contribute the code, then that would be amazing. Like I certainly don't have the time to implement anything like this. But with a feature of this size, it's probably worth us having a fairly lightweight design document that specifies how this would be implemented and like investigates the increased load and that kind of thing, and talks about the failure cases of it. There's a template there, and you can create that design document by creating a PR in that repo, the copy of that template filled in. Like, it doesn't need to be like, you know, really in-depth, super high stress thing, but I think probably this does call for a design document so we can try and iron out this before you start writing code. If I think that makes sense to me. I can see that Tim's got his hand raised, so I'll pass over to him.
So the thing I was wondering is, does Let's Encrypt support this? Since this is the issue that you're using, right?
Yeah.
Do they support OCSP stapling?
I don't know if they support stapling on their own servers, but the certificates that they are issuing have the OCSP URL. So there's an endpoint that we can use to query the certificate status.
Okay. And so that endpoint can also return that staple then?
Yes.
And so the question is now, we obtain these staples, can we also put them in the certificates? Oh, well, in the secrets, basically, yeah, in the secrets. So next to the certificates.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. And then that can be consumed by Istio.
Yes. Assuming we just agree on the name. So one of the proposals is TLS OCSP-staple. And it's a little bit longish, but I think it best reflects the actual purpose. And there are a few others for you to choose from. And Istio is really fixed on standardization. So whatever you guys choose, they will treat it as standard and they will just follow. They don't want to customize those things through APIs.
So the thing that I'm wondering is whether this could be or should be something separate, like something that just looks at all the secrets, all the TLS secrets that we have, extracts the certificate, and then looks for this OCSP header, tries to fetch the staple, and then adds that to the secret.
So that's what you described as external controller doing the same thing. And are you proposing that the change that I'm going to submit adds another controller, or just extends the one which is already there?
I'm not proposing anything. I'm just wondering, does that make sense? Like, to me, it makes sense because it will be a different, like on a different cadence than issuing certificates, for example.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense, like as an implementation for sure, and I suspect a new controller might be needed for this in any case. But by having it be external, you have this period after your certificate's been issued, but before it's been picked up for the OCSP stapling response. And ideally, you would want that at the time it is issued. So it's all, as soon as you get your certificate secret created, it's ready to go and you can use it. Otherwise, you get that, like, you force users into this workflow where they have to look for the OCSP thing and then try again if it's not there yet. You know, and it's a worse user experience.
So from Istio point of view, and in general, from Envoy point of view as well, this OCSP staple is optional. So if it's not there, then it depends on Envoy configuration if Handshake can proceed or not. I think there are 3 modes in Envoy. One is must staple, and there are 2 more lenient modes, like one is optional, I think, and the other one is preferred. something like that. So on optional, there's no error if staple is not there. On preferred, there's an error message if it's not there, and on must staple, I think the handshake will not continue, or even the certificate will not be offered in another handshake. And from Istio point of view, it's just fully transparent. Istio is just forwarding what SDS found, secret discovery found in the secret to Envoy. So it's transparent layer.
Okay.
And yeah, so what I'm looking for is add another control loop, which is in sync with certificate generation. So once certificate is generated, the staple should also appear in the secret, and then there should be two separate loops: one for renewing the certificates, and the other one for renewing the staples. And I think majority of issuers is supporting OCSP because it benefits their infrastructure. So it doesn't have to be limited to Acme ones. As long as there's OCSP server URL in the certificate itself, we can fetch the response and store it inside Kubernetes secret.
I would expect there to be just one control loop that does the OCSP stuff. And if it's possible to do it and tell that it will need to be done again at time X, then we already have a mechanism for renewal, for example, that puts it in a queue to be resynced at time X.
So you would like to iterate more often on the certificates, and if the certificate does not require renewal, then you leave it be, and if the OCSP's response requires renewal, then you renew this one.
When you say renewal, you mean OCSP renewal?
When I say renew for OCSP, is just making another query, and you receive response with longer TTL.
And is it known when it will be needed to do? Always. Is it known when you will need to renew, or is that can you tell at the time X that you will next need to renew? Then I don't know.
So inside the response, you have included valid from and valid to dates, and you know the point in time before which you have to renew the response.
So it's basically I guess one control loop and some kind of status condition. You just requeue it to be, parsed again at that specific time. I'm more curious whether so you said that we need to sync issuance with these OCSP renewals. So does it mean that a certificate would be unready? Does this control loop needs to block certificates ready condition? For example, suppose we are renewing a certificate. So our controllers put the new issued certificate in a secret. Does it matter that the OCSP controller now does something and also does something with the OCSP?
Well, if the certificate was renewed, most likely its fingerprint changed, so the OCSP response stored in the secret will not be validating the right secret. So,
so basically, the readiness control loop that we have needs to be also updated to not. Yeah, but that's going to be problematic because, the information that we have in secret, we consider it atomic. Because we had the same problem with private key and certificate. Because we can't write a certificate in a secret. But is the OCSP also going to go in the secret? Sorry.
Yes.
So basically, it's an atomic thing. We can't write a new certificate in the secret for clients to read, but not write the OCSP, then updated OCSP. So that's going to be a problem. So we need to do that somehow in one operation.
That would be perfect if it could happen in one operation.
So either there needs to be some kind of temporary resource where we write the same way we already write temporary private key. We also write temporary OCSP if it's possible for an issued cert, and only then update the secret in one operation with the new OCSP and the new certificate. Or, yeah, I think that's like the only way how we can do it. Otherwise, we need to add the same OCSP stuff to the same issuing controller. Because otherwise, we will always be at a state where there will be a new certificate in the secret, but the old OCSP.
I don't understand the use case with temporary key. If you could
Because we generate
elaborate on-
we generate private keys ourselves when we renew certs. So you are in a state where you have started renewing, you generated new private key, you still have the old cert that the clients are using. So you put the new key in like a temporary resource whilst you do the issuance, you issue the cert, and like that's because we have different controllers doing these things. Like one generates a key, it puts it in the temporary secret, another one gets the actual certificate, and then yet another one will combine the key and the issued cert and all together put in the secret. So I was imagining in the same way we would deal with the OCSP as well.
But when you said temporary, I thought it would be disposable and replaced with the proper key. But
Just the secret is temporary. It's like for us to keep something in for clients to not read. If we were to immediately put it into the secret, there will be a point in time where the clients read the new key and the old cert.
Understood. Okay. Yeah. So the moment that you are ready to store the new reissued certificate, the same moment you can just make another request for the staple, right? So when the temporary secret is assembled, I think we could also right before this process add the staple, and when we move the temporary secret to the permanent one, let's say permanent one, I know it's not permanent, but to the proper one, then it would contain all three fields, certificate, key, and the staple.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I wanted to know if it needs to be at the same time or not.
But I would really appreciate some introduction to the control loops inside cert-manager. If someone would give me short, just brief intro around the code base, that would be awesome.
I'd be happy to do that, definitely. So I think
Awesome.
I even had some diagram, but yeah, maybe I'll be happy to do that. I can ping you on Slack.
Thank you.
Maybe, like, from what I've heard, I think it's clear that we definitely need some kind of design documents for all the control loop and status stuff, right? So the conditions in the status. I think that definitely needs some kind of design document and some kind of agreement on that, because it's very complex stuff. The thing that I think we can already agree on is that we probably want to make this generic. So it's not based on what issuer you're using. You just look at the certificate itself, the resulting certificate. You search for this OCSP header, and then you retrieve the stamp. If this feature is, so it should also be like enableable and disableable, I guess, through a CLI flag. I'm not sure about that yet. I assume so, since it will be generic across issuers, so it won't be part of the issuer configuration. Or maybe we add it in the certificate configuration or certificate request configuration. That's also an option, I guess. So that's also still something we have to figure out. Is there anything that I've missed that it's also part of this plan? No? Okay.
No, I think that's it.
I've tried to note it in the meeting notes, but I've not put a huge amount of detail in. So if anyone wants to add to that, please feel free. I'm conscious that Richard set his hand up for a while.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think I understood it all, Lucas, but how would an Nginx server deal with these stapled OCSP files? Would it expect to find a file that it would check and reload periodically if it changed, or wouldn't it? I would have thought that the server, if it is a server, that is given a certificate which contains an OCSP reference, I would have thought the server would be responsible for connecting to the endpoint and getting periodically the latest staple.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
How does Nginx work with OCSP staples?
I don't know, to be honest. What I imagine, every ingress server is configured with a Kubernetes secret that stores the TLS secret, and there's some flag in configuration that tells Nginx to serve the which entry in the secret stores certificate, which stores the key, and which stores the OCSP staple. So I know how to configure it with Envoy, but I haven't read the Nginx docs, to be honest.
Okay. I just think it'd be, I mean, I don't know anything about it, but if I imagined it wouldn't be cert-manager that did this. It would be the software that is loading the certificate that would periodically get this OCSP staple and serve it.
That is fair, Richard. That's how it works for Nginx and Apache. I use OCSP stapling on my website in my home lab.
So why can't Istio do the same? And then why does it then have to be any business of cert-manager at all? I'm not being well, I am being argumentative, but
yeah,
we should write all that down in the plan. Make sure that we're going to do something which is usable by not just Istio and Envoy and
so the reason I had in mind was that to decouple those two things, so prefetching the OCSP staple and serving it. So for the serving part, the ingress in use is involved, and in Istio case, this is Envoy. And if you're using Nginx, Traffic, or any other Kong, any other edge ingress edge router, you can configure it with that. And the prefetching loop for the OCSP staple, I wanted to have it as a separate thing, and it can be either realized by absolutely customized controller, which everyone can run on their own cluster, or it can be part of some larger and more common component, which happens to be cert-manager. Hence my proposal.
Got it. Thank you. I don't know enough about it, but I too will read your ticket or proposal, and I'll weigh in if I've got anything to say.
Thank you.
Maybe it's good to first have this higher level explanation and kind of decide on that, because I think Richard is making very valid points here. In my opinion, like now that I've heard his argument, I think it makes sense to me that the web server would just fetch the OCSP stamp, and that would mean that we don't have to have all this complexity in cert-manager. And
so Nginx is capable of saving the staple into the secret?
I don't suppose it needs to. It just keeps it in memory.
Yeah,
in cache memory.
Nginx has the option to configure a cache for OCSP staple responses on disk. So you just store them all in a file essentially, and then it will load previous ones from there. I think I'm starting to be convinced by Richard's point as well. But Envoy, if Envoy isn't aware of this stuff and is just trying to take a queue from whatever secret it's loading, then we need some way to notify Envoy that the staple response has been updated in a long-running Envoy process, and we don't have any way of doing that currently.
Envoy does that with service discovery. So when if the secret is updated, Envoy knows.
Right. Okay. That's fair enough. But still, yeah, it feels more like an Envoy thing the more I think about it. I would be interested to read a design document for it, but yeah, it's a very convincing point. Like I don't know of
And is it
anything
like
else.
a sort of separation of concerns? Like you've got a team who are deploying this SSL web server, and they've been asked to trust the certificate and private key, which is being provided to them by another piece of software, cert-manager, probably managed by a different team. Wouldn't the web server team want to perform their own OCSP checks against that certificate? Wouldn't that be more secure than simply trusting the OCSP staple that cert-manager might have provided?
Yeah, I suppose it effectively means that you can no longer revoke a certificate within the first few days of its lifetime if you're always using one that was created when it was generated. If the OCSP stapling response lasts for 5 days, then all web servers are going to load the cached version from the secret and will therefore not know that the certificate is revoked if you revoked it on the first day. And it's probably more likely to be revoked shortly after issuance if it was misissued.
I think the lifetime of the stamp should account for all that. And I don't know if that's really a valid point to make, but I also don't see why this should be handled by cert-manager, since there's like, you don't need, I feel like cert-manager is responsible for signing, right? So it has to have some kind of privilege to do operations. Retrieving OCSP stamps doesn't require any privileges. It just requires you to fetch a URL, basically. And so that's the reason that I think pushed me over the line to not put it in cert-manager. Because it's a simple operation. You don't need any you don't even need any private key information for it, or any access to an issuer or whatever. Well, you need internet access, I guess. That's the only thing. So that's maybe a point that can be made, right? You need internet access. So, but then I guess all those solutions exist that just create stamps and put it on disk, like sidecar containers, so that you don't need internet access in your pods. That's an example, for example. Or you just have some networking policies to limit the internet access.
Got it. I can't think of any convincing argument to steer you otherwise. But I understand your
documentation,
concerns.
Lukasz. We should write some documentation together, explaining the current state of what you can currently do with cert-manager certificates and OCSP. Did you say that if you use cert-manager to get a Let's Encrypt certificate, it does include these OCSP URLs?
The certificate itself contains the OCSP URL. It's a part of standard, I think.
Yeah, it's added by Let's Encrypt when it issues the certificate. It's an extension.
An optional extension, right?
Yes. Although there is that issue that I linked earlier. There's another extension which can be added, OCSP must stable, which forces consumers of that certificate to go out and fetch it. We don't support that currently, but that is a slam dunk to add to cert-manager.
Yeah, that is the certificate saying that it must be stapled. It shouldn't be provided, like a standalone document.
And how do we tell Let's Encrypt, for example, that we want that in our certificate? Is that something we add to the signing request?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the ACB client has to do it. So like certbot, if you're using that, it has a command line flag to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Irbe, you've gone way back there. It's an early issue.
But there is some interesting discussion. I mean, they do say that, I don't know if the fact about internet access maybe matters. But yeah, I mean, it's ultimately James suggesting that we create out of 3, sure. Oh, sorry, out of 3 controller. Or like, yeah, that out of 3 thing actually wouldn't work if the staple needs to be in sync with the issued cert. It needs to be in 3.
Does it though? That point I was going to ask about. I mean, do these staples, do they overlap? So you can renew a staple before the current one has expired?
Yes, you can. So there's a time window within which the response that you received is valid, but you can renew it sooner than it expires, and then you receive just shifted time window for which the new response is valid.
I'm not sure whether that's okay. I don't know.
I think what you meant, Richard, was whether after you have renewed the cert, you can use the same staple. No?
No, I see your point now. Yeah. So the cert renews, but you've still got the old staple. So that wouldn't work.
But you can still use the old certificate. So, but then in case of, like, if you were to start up just at that point in time, you have to wait for the staple. Otherwise, you would need some kind of smart logic that waits for the staple to match the certificate, and only then switch out both the staple and certificate.
I'm conscious that we're running out of time here, and I kind of do have to leave pretty sharpish at 1. I don't really know where this leaves us with this topic. Like I think I'm reasonably convinced this probably belongs in Envoy and not cert-manager. I suspect that's probably the consensus elsewhere as well. I know that's not. I don't want to say that because I really like it when people come and offer to contribute code, and my instinct is to want it. But I think I'm probably convinced. If you'd like to discuss it more, we have stand-ups every day. From your name, I'm guessing you're a European time zone, perhaps.
Yeah, Poland.
So, yeah,
1 hour.
So we have stand-ups at 10:30 UK time every day. It might be worth you joining one of those to discuss it further at the end of the stand-up. But I think for now we're probably going to have to call an end to this meeting because we're running over time. I'm sure it's getting late for you all. And everyone wants to get on with their evenings. So for now, I'll thank you for joining and for a really interesting discussion. And thank you to anyone that's watching this back on YouTube. If we even end up putting this on YouTube, I'll stop the recording.